Here's a fast food question for you. If you order chicken nuggets at a fast food restaurant in Canada, would they contain the same amount of salt as exactly the same order in, say, New Zealand? Probably a lot more, according to a study out this hour in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. It compares the salt levels in foods from 6 transnational fast food chains in 6 countries, and it makes some key recommendations. The CBC's medical specialist, Dr. Karl Kabasele, is here with more. So, Dr. Karl, tell us a little bit more about what this study found.
Well, here's the thing. We've known for a long time that fast food is high in calories, it's high in fat, and it's also high in salt. Too much salt can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, etc. Now, what the food industry has said is that it's hard to reduce salt in the food because of technical problems, of reconfiguring their recipes and so on. What these researchers wanted to do was to prove that wrong by comparing salt content in similar foods across 6 different countries. What they found was there was great variation, and that seems to prove that it is possible in some cases to reduce the salt in foods.
All right, well, we'll get to that in terms of how we compare to other countries in a second. But,
yeah,
you know, the problem with all of this is that for a lot of people, fast food is just too delicious, and it's because of the salt. But just generally speaking, remind us, salt is one ingredient in fast food, but so there are other ingredients, but why it's important to reduce salt intake.
Well, here's the thing. In terms of the maximum amount of salt overall in one day that you should be taking in, if you can imagine taking a teaspoon, scooping out some salt, that's the amount. It doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not a lot. We don't actually need to take in as much as we do. The problem is the average Canadian takes in way too much. And what that can do across the population is increase blood pressure. And that, of course, we know that, heart disease and stroke is the #1 killer of Canadians. And we know that if we keep eating this much salt, it's contributing to those high numbers of heart attacks and strokes.
I should feel particularly guilty about asking those fast food chains for an extra couple of salts for my French fries.
Oh boy.
That's very bad, right? Yes,
Wow.
You should shake your finger at me. Let's talk a little bit about where Canada ranks in all of this.
Well, they looked at 6 countries, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the U.S., France, and the U.K. Not surprising, the U.S. ranks #1. They're the worst offenders.
When it comes to eating poorly. Yep.
But we shouldn't be too smug because we're right there at #2 when you look at the aggregate sort of average amount of salt in our fast foods, or the ones that they looked at in this study.
So we're #2 out of those 6. So that's why you go to New Zealand in that example, they actually have a lot less salt in their fast food. So. Right. What would be the best way to regulate all of this? Do you think the government should step in and say to people know which ones, the big ones, the big fast food chains, the big burger joints, you need to reduce this, that should be the law, or is there a way to kind of coax them to do that?
Well, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be as coercive as your first example. And the researchers actually put forward the example of the UK, where the food industry works cooperatively with the government to set limits and sort of adhere to them because they're stakeholders in the process. As a result, according to this research, the UK does pretty well in a lot of the food items that they looked at in terms of salt content. And when you compare the UK with the US, the UK looks pretty good. It's still, there's probably work to be done, but because of that cooperation, it really works well.
So finally, what can we do individually to consume less salt and maybe still enjoy? Because, everyone once in a while just craves that fast food terrible meal that tastes so good while you're eating it and you feel so terrible afterwards.
Sure.
But people still have that craving.
Well, you know what? It's the M word. It's all about moderation. So, you can have the occasional enjoyment of your fast food, but it's really about watching how much you eat. And that maybe the most important piece from this research is that the researchers actually got all of the information about salt content from the companies themselves. They've all published, the big fast food chains publish the nutritional information. We as consumers have access to it. What we need to do is, if it's not posted in the restaurant, look it up online, educate yourself, and make decisions accordingly.
You're just being pragmatic about this because there's no point in telling people to never eat this fast food again because they just won't listen, right?
Exactly.
All right, Dr. Karl, thank you so much. Dr. Karl Kabasele.